Hello, I'm Chris Lapados, Anastasiopolis. This is Man Free World. Tech support said they're going to be coming out. I think they said Tuesday afternoon, so we're waiting on that. Close that portal up. Today we're going to do a watch along. We're looking into secret space program, which I call the hidden space program, because it's not that secret, because it's just a little hidden. You can find it though. The disclosure in the Vril Society. This is Robert SEPEHR. SEPEHR. I don't know. I'm gonna give him a like and subscribe on this. You should too. For you, fair use, by the way. Fair use on this watch along, and we're gonna be talking about this old video from Russia that he's translated. It's a documentary from I guess the '90s, and they're discussing the techno magical legacy of Germany, but in the light of the Law of One, the stuff they call the magical is just these other densities, these other what is it right here? These densities here. It's just this interaction with these fourth, fifth, and sixth density. Well, the Nazis were into these guys too much. It was mostly fourth and fifth densities, mostly fourth density beings. So that's the magical ceremonial stuff that they were getting in contact with. They'll talk about it in a second. But the beings that they were contacting were these beings at fifth density and these beings here. They were highly polarized negative that wanted to progress the group here that were negative, on the negative path, which is the service itself route. All right, let's give a listen.
Germany. There's absolutely no doubt about this. Part 1, base.
They were just saying that Americans are fascinated and the world fascinated with this. Well, I don't know if we're not fascinated with Nazi stuff, but the stuff that they seem to be talking about and into, in light of the Law of One, raw teachings. That's where I'm going to be talking, getting a lot of this information from my perspective on this after studying that for several years. It's not the Nazis and all this stuff. It's just what the hell were these beings they were into, and how they get the access to this technology so quickly.
At the beginning of 1947, yet another expedition by the American explorer Richard Byrd arrived on Antarctic shores. It was a very strange expedition. Unlike his previous three, this one was completely financed by the U.S. Navy. Operation High Jump was its code name. Under the command of
This is a real operation. It was real. It really happened. But some of the stuff, like the details about it, have been muddied through time. But it does seem like he got his ass kicked and had to leave. So let's see what they say.
Of Admiral R. Byrd, there was a powerful military squadron, an aircraft carrier, 12 surface ships, 1 submarine, more than 20 airplanes and helicopters, and about 5,000 people on staff. You will agree, a strange team for a scientific expedition.
Yeah, it's not really scientific with all that military equipment. Okay, whatever.
December 2nd, 1946. Before the start of his expedition, Admiral Byrd, at a press conference, said, "My expedition is military in nature," giving no further details.
Well, I guess he said it right there. And I have to say, Robert, could you do something about your speech? Your speech impediment? It's also interesting because it's very selective. Sometimes he's got his S's perfect, other times just...
At the end of January 1947, full-scale aerial reconnaissance began surveying the Antarctic region of Queen Maud Land. It all went to plan in the first weeks. Tens of thousands of photos were taken. Suddenly, the inexplicable happened. The 6-month expedition terminated after only 2 months.
That's kind of a quick termination.
Fleeing the Antarctica coast, it was a real fast retreat. They lost a destroyer, almost half their carrier-based aircraft, dozens of sailors and officers.
Half their aircraft? Holy shit.
The Commission investigation members of the United States Congress, Admiral Byrd, said the following: "In the event of another war, America can be attacked by an enemy that has the ability to fly from pole to pole with incredible speed."
Yeah.
What made the Americans flee? In 1945, 18 months before Admiral Byrd's expedition began, 2 German submarines entered Mar del Plata, port in Argentina, surrendering to authorities. These were
Mar Plata is a sea of gold, sea of the plate.
no ordinary submarines. They were from the so-called Führer convoy. This was a top-secret fleet fulfilling missions. Details have remained a secret till now. The submarine crews were reluctant to cooperate. Even so, the Americans learned a few things. The commander of U-boat U-530 spoke of his involvement in an operation codenamed Valkyrie 2. 2 weeks before the war's end, the U-boat U-530 left the quay, heading for the shores of Antarctica. On board of the submarine were passengers with faces covered in bandages, as well as Third Reich relics. The commander of another U-boat, U-977, Heinz Schaefer, later testified that he followed the same route. It was found that the German submarines repeatedly followed the Antarctic route. But
Why do they keep going down there?
why go there? Antarctica. Recently, huge underground lakes were found, a kilometer deep under the ice. The lake's temperature is 18 degrees Celsius. Located above the water surface are dome-like vaults filled with warm air.
Okay, so there's like it's a lake here. It's from the plates run against each other, creates heat that creates the lake that's on top of the ice sheet or the underneath the ice sheet, so it has a pocket and it has fresh water pocket. So it looks like, I don't know, maybe not, but it's definitely not. It's definitely liquid. It was liquid water here on top of the underneath the ice sheets. That's wild. Okay.
Air. It's possible that from these heated lakes, a constant river of warm water flows into the ocean. For thousands
All right, from the ice. Yeah, melting off the ice, right?
of years, these warm rivers may have formed large underground ice tunnels, perfect for the construction of secret bases. From the ocean's edge, any submarine can easily pass under the coastal ice into these tunnels. Here it was, a complete base, immune from storms and polar cold, totally hidden from outsiders and out of the enemy's reach. Many
And we do have videos of the technology for like how they have all kinds of devices for clearing out snow and making structures inside snow that are warm and hospitable inside these things. It's like U.S. government stuff that they did in the like 50s and 60s.
assumed that in case of a defeat in the war, Antarctica would be a safe haven for the elite of the Third Reich. By 1942, transfer of inhabitants to New Swabia had begun, including scientists, engineers, members and representatives of the Nazi Party and German state. Certain secret industrial technologies were also transferred from Germany.
So they put a new base down there. Wow. If they had the nuclear power, it could be nuclear powered, so they could have unlimited power. If they're doing trade with technology transfers from the Orion group that they're in cahoots with, they've made contact with, then yeah, they can live down there permanently and never be seen ever, unless they want to be.
Post-war, the Americans recruited German scientists to work in the United States, but were shocked to find thousands of highly qualified Third Reich specialists had vanished and weren't listed as dead.
Uh-oh.
Over 100 submarines had also vanished, never to be found.
Oh, that's unusual. Where'd they go?
Who did these flying saucers belong to? Could have been Nazi Germany? Part 2, Ahnenerbe. After the war, in Nazi secret archives, intriguing photos and drawings were discovered. It proved that German scientists were actually engaged in the development of disc-shaped aircraft. At the time, nothing like this existed.
Yeah, I mean, this has all been disclosed now, so what was that stuff? Just
How had Nazi scientists managed to make such a technological leap? Ahnenerbe Society, the most mysterious organization in the Third Reich. Even now, the secret services of leading powers hunt for its secrets. But why? It's simple. This was the only known historical structure engaged in the study of the occult and mysticism to have state funding and support.
Well, that's unusual. Why was they funding the states as sponsor funding?
No organization in the world had at its disposal such a volume of data or had such influence on the development of occult technology as the Ahnenerbe. The Ahnenerbe founders were drawn from the highest ranks of the Third Reich. Research on occult knowledge and paranormal phenomena by the Ahnenerbe received blessings from SS Reichsfuhrer Himmler, who not only acted on his own initiative but also with instructions
You know,
from Adolf.
this guy looks like he's been reading way too much stuff. He's down the deep down inside. He's smoking cigarettes. This is nuts. This is crazy.
Hitler. Officially, the society was founded in 1935 and was intended to explore the historical roots of the German nation. Ahnenerbe, when translated, means legacy of the ancestors.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, so these reptilians think they kind of have some proof that they actually helped breed us, and we have like a lot of our DNA is also this reptilian DNA, which may be from here, and also some from the Orion sector. They haven't really gone into LoORT doesn't go the LoORT, the Love One Raw Teachings doesn't really go into a lot of the Orion group history, like ancient history, but it does seem like we are partly them. So okay, whatever.
However, the society's scope of interest
It doesn't make it right that they can slave us and think that we're their property. That's not a thing. So they need to let that go.
was broader than ancient German history study. Third Reich leaders understood an army's size wasn't necessary to win future wars. Therefore, they adopted the so-called concept of qualitative superiority. Therefore, one can win a war with relatively low quantitative forces, while utilizing high qualitative forces to provide them with qualitative superiority.
I mean, to a point, right? I think when they were doing this scale to take over all of Europe, yes, but once I don't think they understood, because there's reports of those German people and German soldiers after they've been captured coming to the United States and then looking how big this place is and how like there's just no way we just had unlimited resources that we could throw at just bombing the hell out of that place, just make it completely uninhabitable. So they had a point if it was just European sized, but not American industrial base, and that you can't even bomb or touch. Stop.
The Ahnenerbe brought in specialists in the occult, non-traditional, and paranormal knowledge in order to achieve a breakthrough in an area where their opponents would not be competent. Nazi ideology was based on the theory
In other words, they never seen nothing like this.
that in the past there was a powerful Earth civilization with access to secrets of the universe. Somewhere, encrypted and scattered, this higher knowledge was preserved. Specifically, they were tasked with reviving the superhuman in Germany. In their role as an ancient Aryan descendants, they were very interested in Atlantis. Their scientists believed it, the Aryan race's native home. Therefore, Germany was the rightful heir to Atlantean technological knowledge, according to the librarian from one of the Postonsky libraries.
Okay, so Law 1 also goes into this other time period when we did have a high technological civilization during the Atlantean period, and I guess they're referring to that, which is true. Seems to be a thing. So we actually went through that once before. We've been here before.
In March of 1945, he witnessed Soviet troops approaching German territory. The Ahnenerbe were evacuating a library carrying away 140,000 volumes. The library catalog would be very interesting. It's possible the Ahnenerbe learned something incredible about Antarctica. They made the study of this continent one of the main Nazi leadership goals. Actually, the SS were after very specific knowledge. Studies were carried out concerning the paranormal abilities of employees of the Ahnenerbe. The results were recorded on personal files. When the war started, officers with these paranormal abilities, along with others who displayed paranormal skills, were merged into a single Ahnenerbe department.
I mean, that's what this whole thing, like when they go, well, psychic abilities isn't real. Well, it's because some people have more talent, a real talent. Like, where did it come from? It's not clear. Karmic, they might be part ET soul. It's not understood where this comes from. It doesn't seem to be able to be trained. It seems to be innate, built in. So when you say talent, that's what I mean. Innate, built in. Something about this person, they just can have more predilection to seeing and understanding and being able to communicate for whatever reason. It's probably karmic.
Unfortunately, there are no records on what this department was working on, or more importantly, what results were achieved. One of the main objectives
Sounds like MK Ultra.
pursued by the Ahnenerbe experts was the use of paranormal abilities to contact unknown beings. Part 3, Saucers.
Yeah, so Law of One is a channel. It was a channel, but the way it was channeled is very different than most of what all these other channels that I've ever seen. It's very unique how it came through, and you can go look into that if you want to know. But this is how it sounds.
Secret Thule Society members, the Ahnenerbe's predecessor, among the selected were 2 experienced mediums, or contactees, as we say today. One of them hides under the mysterious name of Sigrun.
Well, contactee. I mean, someone who makes like psychic contact is a little different than physical contact. And it's like let's get our language straight, Mr. SEPEHR.
Other is Maria Orsic from Zagreb. She speaks of strange things in a trance state, from a civilization in the Taurus constellation. She receives incredible technical information. This knowledge shocked no one. On the contrary, it attracted huge interest, as it concerned the construction of an unusual flying vehicle.
I think that Taurus is a head fake. I really do believe it's more Orion. There may be another base in Taurus that's more Aryan, like this for whatever root race they're coming from. But man, these reptilians are so wily, they can present themselves as all kinds of stuff,
which could alter the flow of time around it. A step toward the dream of the secret society, a time machine penetrating deep into history, obtaining the knowledge of ancient high civilizations. It's no surprise concerning the well-known fact, namely most of the staff of the American Antarctic stations are personnel of the United States National Security Agency.
That is interesting, isn't it? That most people down there aren't just scientists. There's something else going on.
Employees of American military, technical, intelligence, electronic intelligence, and Central Intelligence Agency employees. These categories represent the main research personnel on American Antarctic stations.
Isn't that interesting?
Start, 2, 1, boost ignition.
Dr. Wernher von Braun was one of the most important champions of space exploration in the 20th century. Born in what was then the German Empire and is now Poland, he became enamored as a youth with the possibilities of space exploration by reading science fiction, which eventually prompted von Braun to later master calculus and trigonometry so that he could understand the physics of rocketry. From his teenage years, von Braun had held a keen interest in spaceflight, becoming involved in the German Society for Space Travel and then to work for the German Army to develop liquid fuel rockets in conjunction with Dr. Hermann Oberth, an Austro-Hungarian-born German physicist.
Oberth, I've heard that quote they're about to talk about is not real, but I've also heard it is real. But considering how these guys were all involved with that stuff, I think it was very real. Yeah, they got help from other beings. That's what their main contact. I mean, Maria Orsic said they got plans written in the special language for the cult. So was that lying? I don't know.
An engineer. What you are looking at is a rocket launch as seen from the International Space Station on November 16th, 2018, made from 2,050 individual time-lapse photographs. An achievement made possible by contributions from many German scientists like von Braun, who after World War II were utilized by Allied governments and exploited for their knowledge of advanced propulsion technology.
Yeah,
this same technology,
Paperclip did definitely all the public space program stuff, for sure.
According to the official word from NASA, was used to safely get man to the moon and back. I say according to NASA because the claim is disputed by some who say that the moon missions were at least in part staged. Yeah. While the official narrative remains controversial, even more controversial are allegations that the German Nationalist Party had obtained even more advanced technology and had already been to the moon long before the creation of NASA itself.
Yeah, that's my beef. That's my beef with all this. That's what I keep dunking on my Facebook and stuff, is about these moon hoax people that we went to the boom way before we saw the rockets get up there, that if they even did. So.
If you would just kind of give us a background and an outline of just what was the German saucer project, as we understand at this point.
The German saucer project was an offshoot of their advanced aviation and space research and development. Disbelieving at the beginning the existence of German saucers, I made a thorough search of books on advanced German aerospace technology, and what I discovered was astonishing. The Germans were the first to develop, seriously to develop the rocket engines. the turbojet engine, the pulse jet, the ramjet. They were the first to test a rocket-powered airplane in flight, a rocket-powered...
I mean, that within the space of 20 years to develop all those technologies and all the things that are supported, all the metallurgy and all the casting and all the precision part machining, it's like in that such a short period of time. I mean, yes, they were working on it of a lot before that, so they had the skill set like ready there, but to have that level of technical expertise in the 30s and 40s is just like what.
A turbojet powered and a pulse jet powered airplane, piloted planes. They were the first one to introduce them in combat service. That's all what we know.
They also developed the flying wing.
They developed the flying wing, the Houghton brothers. They developed a turbojet flying wing. They were working on monstrous intercontinental bombers of bizarre designs. I have several hundred slides that I've taken from books from the public domain of design that was so ahead. The Germans developed, according to some even more advanced rumors,
This guy was talking back in the 90s. It was like 90s, like 96, 95, 97, somewhere around that range. Nobody knew about this stuff back then. I mean, I was starting to kind of pay attention a little bit. I kind of knew there was some technology, but to find this video was like, you have to be super into it. And you have to go pile through a lot. Like, we'll do a watch through with the Mirage Man, but no, it's just now we're to have enough information to go look at these things as people upload these videos and talk about them. Now that we can say, oh, okay, this is like they're putting some pieces together now finally, but we were in the dark until at least 2010, 2015 or so. Like it's like so hard to figure all this stuff out.
They developed the time machine. According to other rumors, the bombs that were thrown over Hiroshima and Nagasaki were German. The American project went along other lines, and the bombs that were produced were much bulkier and impossible to load on an airplane. A light-emitting rocket hit the moon in 1938, unmanned rocket. A light-emitting propulsion that I've never heard of, different from anti-gravity, different from rocket propulsion, probably very economic. Free energy, quite because you can't load car batteries to power the laser that would emit the light to take the rocket to the moon, obviously. In 52, German engineers built for Juan Perón a cold fusion electricity producing plant in Argentina.
Flying discs that were powered by conventional engines, basically.
By the engine, same engine that they use for the...
You probably meant the free energy, not cold fusion. Room temperature, superconductor stuff.
Messerschmitt 262 fighter.
Which would be a conventional engine,
conventional,
rather than an exotic...
No, conventional turbojet engine running on mundane, low-grade aviation kerosene.
There's a significant body of evidence out there that suggests that a significant number, if not all, UFOs come from right here on this planet.
Yeah. Most of I would say 99% of the ones that people say they've seen, I would say 95% are the ones that are definitely U.S. government ones. You have to be polarized to a certain level to be able to see some of this stuff. And if you definitely don't believe it or want it, the positive ones will not present themselves to you at all. They will not. They will actually hide. Negatives, I mean, they're already all over the place right now, so we're already dealing with them. They don't really need to show themselves as much as they just show their technology transfers that have been, humans have built, or they've helped humans build. That's all the stuff we see most of the time.
And we're going to look at that evidence. There's a book written by Renato Vesco, an Italian author who was in the military, Italian military, during World War II, and he had access to some very interesting files, German files, on German flying disc technology, that the Germans were developing flying discs along with other bizarre aircraft during World War II. And that's what we're going to be looking at, and what developed from that. And do some of the UFOs we see today, are they a product of that technology?
Well, I would say, through the research that I've done and the people that I've talked to, that the majority of what we see are actually built here on this planet and maintained and flying on this planet. But it's really, it's awful hard to believe, still even for me, that our government is keeping this from us. And here we're supposed to be, we're touted as the greatest country in the world.
Okay, wait. So this is already the blue pill Americanism stuff. That's still the 90s. This is all cable access, you can tell. This is a plastic plant, more than likely. This is the boomers. We thought America still exists. We weren't. Nobody told us, or my parents are the boomers. One was a boomer. They didn't tell us any of this stuff, that this was going on, like that the government There's no constitution. It's some administrative class, some series of bureaucracies that changed over in the World War II with FDR. He wiped away the Constitution and replaced it with this other thing. So, yeah. This is the sad part. This is kind of sad to listen to this.
Still, even for me, that our government is keeping this from us. And here we're supposed to be.
Of course they are, because they're in cahoots with these beings. Come on, stop.
Touted as the greatest country in the world, and that we have so many freedoms here, and that the freedom of speech reigns supreme over all of the world here in the United States, and yet it doesn't.
Right.
And yet it doesn't.
Well, it goes back to the days of the Mercury flights and NASA, or the moon rockets and so forth. Our technology was the biggest, the bestest, the mostest. And if this is a product of our technology, this is an incredible stride for mankind and for this country. So why aren't we talking about it? Why don't we wave our flag a little bit and say, hey, this is what we've created?
We've got Vladimir on the phone, and we'll be asking him some questions. Please feel free, if we have time, to call in. We'll try to get some right at the end.
Old Cable Access was the only place you'd see this, and this show would be on for maybe 1 hour every 3-4 weeks. In that area only. You couldn't get it other places unless this person who was the producer of the show, you knew them, and then you contacted them personally and then had them copy tapes and send them in the mail to you. I actually did this because I had a cable access show back around 1999 to 2003 or so, 2002. Yeah, and I would do trade tapes with people, and that's how we got stuff on the air. So unless there was someone dumb like me, some crazy guy who wanted to get their stuff on the TV and let people see it, you weren't going to see it.
We're going to be talking to him about the German saucer in the 30s and 40s. Jim had the opportunity to interview him while we were in Phoenix both times, wasn't it, Jim?
Yes.
The part that showed some of the pictures and stuff was last year, and then...
Well, I've seen Vladimir 3 times. I saw him when he was here in May of '91 for the World Congress, and then he covered the same material again in the Congress in Phoenix last year, and then again this last month in Phoenix again.
And nobody's doing this. Roger, you knew him when you were living in Los Angeles, wasn't that true? Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's almost about 3.5 years ago. He's a very regular attender of a lot of UFO affairs over there. So he's a very difficult man to have in the audience. He asks very pointed questions. He goes right to the heart of things.
I know. He told me before we came on the air. He asked me to not talk about a certain subject, and we'll try to let that go. Are you on the phone, Vladimir?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Hey.
I've got Jim and Roger here.
Excellent.
And we're going to fire some questions at you.
Excellent. I want skeptical questions.
Well, you probably get them.
Skeptical.
Okay. Somebody want to start off?
Well, I've had my shot. Roger, you take a shot at Vladimir for us.
Well, Vladimir, you've been around this scene for an awful long time. How advanced from the state of the craft, in other words, rather than going from the beginning, let's go at things from the front. And how advanced do you believe at this point in time that German technology is? We'll say here, in other words, wherever it's at. And if you can, comment about the location down in Antarctica and about some of the facilities there.
I want to make one clarification here that the very definition of German technology is a little bit fuzzy, because Germany in its European location is one thing, but the German colony on the South Pole is basically linked much closer to the secret projects going on in the United States and Russia through the, secretive channels of the basically planetary government that runs the planet. So it's not just a separate German technology on the South Pole. It's very much interwoven, probably in my opinion, inseparably interwoven with the secret American or Russian technology of the super black projects in both countries.
Yeah, so basically what he's saying is it's not really Germans that are really in this group. It's sort of like they're more tied with this ideology of the secret society, which is in contact with this Orion group entities that are running the slave interplanetary, interstellar slave trade. I don't think it's intergalactic. I think they are local to this galaxy. I think that's a thing for them. They seem to be, that's a thing. You can dominate a galaxy, but you know, going outside ultragalactic is like super hard to deal with. So it seems to be, and there's only one group that seems to be mainly in charge here, doing all the things. That's this Orion group.
My point of line of research has been that all behind the smoke screen of the Cold War for all these years, the Americans and Russians and the Germans in the South Polar Colony have been the best of buddies in the very secretive research of the, let's say, the alternative twist scenario, Moon and Mars survival and evacuation colonies, or the Star Trek scenario. It's my feeling that nuclear-powered anti-gravity craft has been built for 20, maybe 30 years by the superpowers and used in outer space, interstellar exploration. Basically, what we see on Star Trek. It's a reality.
Yeah, that's the real hidden space program. They've taken these technologies and, you know, imagine when the 20 or 30 year period to get all that turbo fan crazy going from props to like super intense jet engines. Well, they kept going with that, and you know they built Star Trek devices, Star Wars devices to travel out to the stars, and that's what Star Trek and Star Wars are about. That's what they're trying to doing drip disclosure, getting humanity ready for possibly, and they actually do part of the religion as well. They have to tell you all the things that are going on, even if you don't believe it and you think they're just making it up. It's just silly lies, but they have to put it in a way where people will understand and know the story, you know the concepts of these things and these technologies and how they work. Yeah.
For a limited number. So, I mean, how advanced is the German technology on the South Pole? To come back to your original question, this is the secret terrestrial technology at these highest levels of conspiracy. I mean, there are no superpowers feuding with each other. They're all best of friends working together under the management of the, basically overseeing extraterrestrial and celestial management.
Well, if that was, if you really
management of the planet, yeah.
feel that's the case, then how come in the late 40s and early 50s were German craft overflying the United States, and why were we scrambling fighters and trying to shoot some of them down?
Why? Well, because in the late 40s, early 50s, the Germans were still working on their turbojet craft. I mean, they were already phasing them out in favor of their spinning magnetic field craft. But many of these quote-unquote German craft over the United States have actually been secret craft of the American black programs. I mean, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand does. Actually, there are many hands to the octopus of the secret government.
It's really great that like I can listen to this after doing all the research that this gentleman who's on the phone is talking about, because when I first heard this tape, I completely dismissed all of this information. But after exposure to the law of one and cross-referencing this information, yeah, he's spot on.
I'm saying, Vladimir, if you remember the news reports, there was an extensive flap in the very early 50s. And many.
And I'm sure this guy on the phone, the Vladimir, whatever his name is, he's never heard of Law of One. Doesn't care about it. Never heard about it. No, that irrelevant.
Of these apparently were German craft, and the point that I'm making is we scrambled a lot of fighters. We tried to shoot those down. If they were, in other words, if it was part of a cooperative program with us, that they were working with us, why the effort to shoot them down? Why?
Of course, I mean, there's so many smoke screens and camouflage going on simultaneously because the Air Force may know nothing, or the lower level of the Air Force may know nothing about the secretive arrangements, condominium arrangements with the Germans on the South Pole that probably Admiral Byrd did during
compartmentalize is what he meant.
His sailed or smokescreen campaign to drive them out of the South Pole in 46, 47. So the Air Force may just see a legitimate enemy and try to shoot it down, but the guys above that know that, oh no, these are our secret friends on a secret mission here. A lady that lives in Sedona by the name of Helga Morrow published an article in a Sedona newsletter. I interviewed her in a substantial, extensive 2-hour interview. Her father was a German scientist, moved through the probably possibly paperclip camp program in the United States after World War II, and worked on very secretive German projects. But before he died, he admitted to her that he went to the moon, inside the moon, to Mars, and inside Mars. But no.
Yeah, so he went to the moon, inside the moon, and then went to Mars, inside Mars. Yeah, there's bases on the moon, there's bases on Mars. That's why it's so funny talking about these rocket landings on the moon. No, he's not going to let you do that. It's already occupied, yo.
Not with sulfur travel, but he went with teleportation to these destinations.
Right, that's the other thing, too. So they eventually graduated to these teleportation rooms. All right, that's so they don't even need spacecraft anymore. They just have these rooms that they enter and they walk out the other side somewhere else, just like in that freaking Stargate. All the stars, all the star movies are real stuff.
So, in a way, I've gotten even beyond the alternative 3 claims of a saucer landing on Mars by finding stories that talk about teleportation travels to Mars and Moon and beyond, which give more credence to the claims of Al Bielek that teleportation has been developed in this country starting from the 30s, and by the late 50s it was fully developed and online for the secret government project. In the 60s and 70s they developed the time tunnel traveling technologies.
There's a time channel. So there have been This is another thing that's been messing with all this stuff is they're trying to do these time travels and they can go all these timelines and they've discovered they can actually change things in the future, but then it just snaps back at some reason for some reason to like this seems like this particular timeline we're on right now. So they've tried to fuck with it, but they can't because there's some event that they can't get around that always comes back to this event that we're on right now, which is the Love One. So interesting. So it's interesting they've had all these discoveries and all these experiments, and it goes like there is free will, but there's also fate.
Technology of the Phoenix project that is described in the Montauk project book.
Wait a minute, this is Jim. How you doing?
Hey, Jim.
Just
Nice to hear your voice.
on behalf of our viewing audience, the audience that may be a little bit skeptical about all this German material.
Well, bombard me with skeptical questions.
Very good. Those of us who are fairly well versed with history know that the Germans reigned England with the buzz bomb and the V1 to V2 bombs.
Yeah.
4,000 of those things built while they were being bombed the shit out of that place. Underground, without big factories. Those Germans, they just knew how to build stuff underground inside the mountains. So when they went to Antarctica, it wasn't really that much of a stretch because they're already doing it. They already built it. They already figured it out.
If they had technology as advanced as flying discs, why weren't they used to combat the Allied air forces at the end of World War II, and why didn't they succeed in defeating the Allies?
Very easy. I can answer your question with a counter question. I've heard stories that Tesla developed a gas ray, actually a dematerialization ray for the U.S. Army in the late 30s. You would point it to any object, a stone, a truck, a tank, a soldier, anything, and the thing would disappear. The ray would shift the target, the vibrations of the target, a little bit off time, basically and technically putting it in a different time continuum, making it disappear from our continuum. So anything
That was also the Philadelphia experiment stuff.
that you pointed from here on to the horizon would disappear. I mean, whole armies would be annihilated in seconds. Why didn't the Americans use this thing to demolish the Germans much earlier? Obviously, no government uses its most advanced and secretive technology. They always try to keep it for a more special purpose. So, the V1, the buzz bomb, and the V2 were fairly advanced rockets anyway. Nobody had them from the other side, so the Germans were using some of their advanced technologies. But the saucers, they were very well guarded, and the Germans were preparing a retreat to the South Pole, especially after 42 when the guys with the brains in Berlin realized that they would lose the war.
Yeah.
Anybody who knew the real industrial might of England, Russia, and United States combined realized that, what proved at the end of the war that there were 500,000 Allied planes against 100,000 German planes produced. For every German plane in the air, there were 5 Allied planes. Figures that are not very often discussed in the press. So knowing this, as early as probably 42, 43, the Germans started making tremendous effort to move hundreds of thousands of people to the South Polar colony and to keep the saucer's existence as secretive as possible. At the same time, Renato Vesco, he's considered the Italian Werner von Braun, the research and development boss of the Italian Air Force during the war, wrote in his book Intercept But Don't Shoot that there have been dozens of Foo Fighter attacks and Kugelblitz attacks on Allied bomber formations with
So the Foo Fighters. That's it. That's the stuff right there.
devastating results that have been documented by the Allied air forces. They did not reach the Allied threat for obvious reasons.
Okay, Vladimir, what would you say is the best evidence, the most compelling evidence for the fact that the German saucer projects were a reality?
Funnily enough, the simplicity of obtaining anti-gravity. Anti-gravity is really obtained by simple spinning of any object along a vertical axis, as is the claim of 2 Japanese scientists from Tohoku University, Hayasaka and Takeuchi, who published a very important seminal paper in 1989 in the Physical Review Letters, one of the top 5 physics journals in the world. Simple spinning of a used airplane gyroscope would reduce its weight. It's official academic scientific literature. If it is that easy to produce anti-gravity, if one would not need the fancy science fiction hardware that Bob Lazar is revealing in his film that our government has been...
It is probably simple, but there's something about it that you have to do that's not being disclosed. That if you do figure it out, you'll get a little visit. You'll get a visit from someone.
Secretly back engineering in Nevada test site by using a hand-me-down alien technology utilizing element 159. Maybe this is a legitimate anti-gravity drive and you can obtain anti-gravity even by this means, but normally anti-gravity is very easy to produce. If it is that easy, then you can couple every existing engine in your arsenal with spinning lenticular airframe and produce an anti-gravity craft, and the Germans did just that. They had piston engines with propellers spinning the craft around. They had Wankel engines with propellers. They had turbojets, pulse jets, ramjets, rocket engines in inboard and outboard variations, custom-made, standard aviation turbojets they were using on the Messerschmitt 262 plane, standard rocket engines they were using for the Messerschmitt 163 rocket plane, rocket engines probably for the V2 were used for the rocket-propelled craft that could go in the outer atmosphere. The simplicity of anti-gravity. This is probably the biggest argument that the Germans really had these things. On top of that, we've probably discovered we have the largest collection of original newspaper articles from Germany from the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Okay, but and also the reports of bomber crews, Allied bomber crews who witnessed Foo Fighters and similar disc-type craft approach as they would were in their bomb runs over Germany and France and so forth. The alleged Foo Fighters would be seen approaching the bombers from the ground. They'd be coming up from German airspace rather than from above. Correct?
I mean, they would be seen approaching them from everywhere because they would come from underground. They would from the ground surface level. They would be hanging on the air, waiting for the bombers to come, like glowing Christmas tree ornaments in the night skies of Germany. But they were so maneuverable, they could fast outpace. I mean, they were making probably 2-3 times the speed of sound in the atmosphere.
But how were those things powered, Vladimir? Because those things look much different than the pictures. You had an extensive array of saucer pictures with big German guns on them, like with tank turrets and a variety of
much later generation of craft that didn't use any turbojet or rocket engines. These were spinning magnetic field craft powered by basically free gravitational energy. But the earlier models were powered with low-grade aviation-grade kerosene.
So he's saying that the first Foo Fighters were gasoline powered, turbojet powered, spinning magnets or whatever they're doing, and then for the later ones they just spun an electric field and ran it off the free energy system.
And the turbojet craft were air breathers. They would use atmospheric air.
But what about, excuse me, but Vladimir, what about the Foo Fighters themselves? In other words, these glowing balls that...
Renato Vesco has about a chapter, maybe 20, 30 pages of the whole construction of the Foo Fighters. They were spherical machines. They were basically unmanned anti-aircraft weapons platforms. They would raise vertically. They would be guided with television cameras. The first television cameras in military usage were utilized probably on these.
So those are the first drones. Those little Foo Fighters are actually drones driven using this anti-gravity stuff, but driven with video cameras. Interesting. Okay.
They would have.
You know, they had that stuff at that time. You know, 1930s. They had television going, so they knew how to do all that stuff.
Heat-seeking infrared capability. They would have acoustic target-seeking capability. They would have what else? Magnetic target-seeking capability. Radio-controlled, remote-controlled. They had turbines in the center of the craft. I'm not sure whether they carried the oxidizer on board or they were air breathing. I have a suspicion that the Kugelblitzes were non-air breathing, that they were carrying the oxidizer on board.
Vladimir, on this
turbines. They were using turbojet turbines.
This with all of these Foo Fighters and German saucers during the war and the Allied shooting at them, you would have thought that they'd have shot one down in Austria or Yugoslavia or somewhere where somebody other than the Americans or the Russians or the Germans could get to it and either destroy it or take it. Or even reports of bomber pilots or fighter pilots coming back saying, have you run across anything like this?
Very good question. Actually, the Foo Fighters had some automatic circuitry, and their very design was made in such a way that if you would puncture the outer shell with a machine gun or a cannon burst, the gases that were, because it was a double shell construction, and the outer shell was a porous, sintered ceramic material, ceramic metallurgy, probably developed for the first time in Germany, and gases would be emitted from the whole outer skin porous surface. So if you make a large hole through a bullet entry, gases would escape through this hole even more vigorously, and the craft would automatically move away from whoever is shooting at it. I mean, they had this built-in automatic feature. Renato Vesco talks on pages upon pages of all these things. Even if they shot something down, by the time it falls and explodes and burns down, I mean, the debris would be so mangled, it would take quite a bit of a genius of an engineer to put it all together. What type of a device was it flying? I think that the Allies not only captured, they may have captured shot devices. I don't know. I know.
I mean, would they let people know if they did, really? Probably not.
Record of such instances. But they definitely captured a vast treasure of information from the underground bases in Germany after the war ended. I mean, they had...
Right, they had all the plans and all the tool die sets and machine tools.
About 300
They didn't know all that. They knew all that stuff.
Underground facilities, according to Renato Vesco, that were huge underground cities. One of them, the Mittelwerk complex next to the concentration camp Dora, was 2 kilometers long by 1 kilometer wide. We're talking about millions of square yards of floor space, shop space.
If the viewers want to find out more, is there anything written on here? I know that we are going to, next week, go ahead and profile your interview with Jim Nichols as well as some of the photos that you show during your lecture, but is there anything that is in print? Are you presently working on a book or anything that these people would be, our viewers would be able to pick up and?
I have a long list of videos that we have made. Half of them are on basically the German anti-gravity technology, the German colony on the South Pole, secret space flights by the superpowers to the moon, Mars, and beyond, according to the alternative 3 and other scenarios.
Let me ask you one last question.
So you're talking about Alternative 3, which was a big movie that came out in the 80s, late 80s, and it was about how it was fictionalized. I think it was Drip just disclosure about how a lot of the scientists in Britain and America, about 1/3 of them left in the 70s, and they just kind of like nobody knew where they went, and they went to Mars. They went to Mars and to work on and do scientific work there, and other planets. So that's Alternative 3.
Here on my part, the Germans, with the technological development that they've done, there was certainly some involvement by Hitler in some very strange and unusual things. Do you believe that the Germans themselves had any type of connection with extraterrestrials or alien races during the early parts of their development programs?
Yeah, I've heard this story on numerous occasions. For example, I heard that there was a saucer crash near around Peenemünde, another saucer crash in the Bavarian Alps, which may have been used as an excuse by the German secret elite to peddle this flood of new technological information, this avalanche of information to trickle it down into German economy and industry without having to explain exactly where they got it from. But I do think that the Germans were heavily involved in, they had contact with extraterrestrials, several races probably, and the more time passes, the more I'm willing to accept the idea that basically extraterrestrials have always been in contact with the main
Actually, that phone doesn't work anymore.
extraterrestrial government, and especially the secret societies, which are the fifth column for the introduction of a particular extraterrestrial philosophy in our society. The German secret societies like the Thule Gesellschaft, the Vril Society, and numerous others that I don't even know, have all been in contact with different types of alien races. And from here comes this enmity and competition.
Many types, many species from all kinds of places.
Between terrestrial secret.
But the main one that's in control of this place is the Orion Group, and they are been allowed to by the Council of Saturn, who have worked with the sun, the logos, with this group of humans who are chronically repeating to try and get them to maybe someone to think about like maybe polarizing positive and getting off this crazy ride.
Societies, which basically
and move up the chart here instead of going 3D negative or just repeat where you have to go back on this level third density again. That we're being encouraged to take the positive route, which is thought, word, and deed more than 51% of the time thinking about how your thought, word, and deed is going to affect someone else. That's really the big. That's it. Really.
Kind of support their extraterrestrial backers.
Let me ask one more little question here. You have an excellent selection of photos. Where in the world did you dig all those photos up?
Well, it says very simple in the Bible, search and you shall find. It's all in the public domain literature. One has to have the, how should I say, the belief that these things will be found, and they really come one by one.
Right, and and one of the things also is the people one of the things of these people's religion is they do have to tell you what they're doing and make it known, and not why, but they tell you what and how. If you can understand it, they'll tell you how, but they don't really say why. I mean, they'll basically be telling you why, but they're not going to say, hey, this is what we're doing. It's like, we're going to do it, and what this, we got this, we got doing this. They let you know all the stuff, but it's kind of up to you to figure out what's going on. No one's going to come out and say, I'll tell you what I would say. Okay, their Orion Group have enslaved humanity, are allowed to enslave humanity to teach them the lesson of what it means to be a slave for this group that has been, enslaving and fighting for a long time, to let them feel it for the final thing, to like, hey, this isn't cool, right? No, it's not cool. So you just stop doing it, right? It's like, yeah, we'll stop. Oh, well, some people are like, no, we don't give a fuck. We're going to keep doing it. We don't care.
And I'm waiting for information from Japan,
Those people aren't going to graduate.
From Argentina, information from Russia, Czech.
Well, they'll get another try. There you go. whatever.
Slovakia. People are coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
And anyone who calls
Hey,
me brings in one new single photo, I simply download everything that I have.
Vladimir, now let's get specific about some of these. You have very good quality color photos of craft that are in the air and very advanced designs. Now,
So that was a really hard to find back then. It was like a really big deal. Get the photos of the craft, the photos of the craft. And honestly, the photos of the craft are interesting in some ways, but it's again this technology transfer. The actual real, what's real is others. The stuff I've been talking about is actually really difficult to like find and understand. And of course, when you encounter it, you'd be like, this is ridiculous. This could not be possibly occurring. But when you hear more information about this, you can keep going and going and going and going. And it starts to repeat after a while. It's like, yeah, when you cross-reference all these Golden Dawn and OTO and all these secret societies and NASA, and the fact that NASA does a ritual it's this based on this crap every time they launch something important. It's like they're shouting, we are serving Orion ET group. But we're like, and they put it in the movies and on the TV and everything like that. But it's like, but they will never say they're actually doing it. But they'll do every other thing around it except tell you.
where did you find some of these?
A friend of mine, either he or some of his relatives shot a Kugelblitz in flight over Mount Rainier in the early 50s. He's living in Los Angeles. He was the owner of the negative of this photo.
That was really a big thing back then. But now we've just been flooded with this stuff now. And we don't know. Half it's like every 1% of it may be actual real ET crap, but it's doubtful because they're just not allowed to do that for lots of reasons. So it's mostly fakes and government craft or secret hidden space program craft, wherever, with some faction of it.
And he made me a copy.
Well, how
I
about
got it from him. He sold that later to Bill Hamilton, and the photograph appeared on the back of his book, Top Secret.
Ah, well, what
Stuff used to be such a big deal, but now it's like whatever.
about some of those that had the big cannon and the turrets?
These are black and white. I shot them with my camera off my TV screen, and they are coming from the German video documentary film called UFOs or the Third Reich Striking Back.
That kind of seems like really hard to get access to this information up until it started getting easy to get access around 2007, 2009, around that period of time. Before that, it was super hard. You had to like order tapes, and all they would have was like one frame off the tape, usually just the title frame. So it would have a description. You had to like figure out the description. The tapes were super duper expensive because it'd be copies of a copy of a copy. And but you can at least see something. And it was like really big deal back then just to get like any kind of physical evidence. And that was before I knew anything about the Law of One. I'd heard about the Law of One up in about 90, 98 or so, 99. But I completely ignored it. I thought it was ridiculous.
Which came through a friend of mine in Germany. He's a major New Age publisher and publicist in Germany. The film was originally produced by a secret German society, quite probably the Tourist Society. They never put their name under the film, but this is what the grapevine says.
Okay.
And the Tourist Society guys are kind of keepers of the flame. They preserve photographs, documentary material, and so on.
Vladimir, one of the things that I'm sure puzzles some of the audience
Sounds like he's saying that the Thule Society is still active.
is
Makes sense.
why wasn't Hitler pushing the use of this kind of technology with a greater extent? I mean, was this kind of technology being kind of hidden from Hitler by his own people?
Well, it's a good question and quite a complicated question. But I've heard stories that, for example, Hitler had a rule: never introduce in warfare a weapon that they didn't have developed the anti-weapon. They introduced the turbojet fighters and bombers only after they have introduced the anti-aircraft heat-seeking missiles in place. I've heard stories that actually the two nuclear bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were German construction. That by the end of the war, the Germans were working on an antimatter bomb, time machine, and many other bizarre advanced technologies, death ray, and so on, free energy. But the antimatter bombs were as big as a pineapple and strong enough to devastate the whole of New York or London, which could not be done with a small Hiroshima-sized bomb.
Right, but the question is...
So Hitler opposed the use of these nuclear bombs over England or the United States on a very racial reason. He said, we are not in the business of killing Aryans. This was the same reason he told his general staff when he opposed the German army rolling over the escaping British British and French soldiers at Dunkirk in, I think, 40 or 41, when they were defeated, and Hitler stopped his armies, allowing the Allied fleet to evacuate these defeated soldiers in England and basically use them for the D-Day invasion again.
Okay, but after the war, as the war was winding down, it was obvious that the Germans were defeated. Wasn't there a secret cadre of his own Nazi SS that took this technology and took it out of the country before it could be captured by the Allies?
Oh, yeah. I think from 42, 43, the smart guys in Germany had made their own plans that they are about to lose the war, so why don't we just let's work on some escape scenario. So every new technology was tested quietly, low-key, I mean low profile. For example, they tested a greenish-looking radiation, a death ray in Romania, and they packed and crated and shipped everything to the South Pole. They would test it, make sure that it worked, and they would never try it again, and they would move it to the South Pole. So when Admiral Byrd arrived with a huge three aircraft carrier, it's a triple armada descending on the South Pole from 3 directions, they were beaten in 2 weeks and hastily retreated. I mean, probably the Germans had at least one smart move by not using these weapons in 44, 45 on the European theater, but concentrating everything they had in the South Pole theater.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's like, okay, we'll keep fighting over here, but we're gonna move all this stuff out of here now. We've got enough tech that we can go do our stuff and go off world and from that base down there.
If such a technology, or if such a renegade Nazi force escaped to South America or Antarctica and has been there all this time, unassailed by any of the Allies or Soviets, that's really pushing credibility to believe that such a group could still exist down there. What
yeah,
kind of evidence
the
is
rumor
there?
goes that there is a large city called the New Berlin.
And why haven't they tried to complete the goals of the Third Reich in the years since then?
Well, not that they have tried, they have completed them. They have produced a master race on the South Pole, according to the rumor. They have genetically engineered and re-engineered themselves to the point where they live quite a bit longer. They have fewer diseases. They are probably able to, not probably, but they developed genetic engineering to such a perfection that, I mean, the Germans had hybrids between humans and animals 50 years ago in the concentration camp, so where are they now after 50 years? But this is a research that goes on hand in hand with...
Right, where are they now? We're about to find out.
The other superpower governments.
You know, one of the things, this could be all be a big fake, right? And they've genetically engineered aliens and then introduced these things, but they're just creatures that they've made to look like aliens, but they're puppets.
My feeling and suspicion,
it's gonna get crazy.
Is that the tall, blonde, Nordic-looking guys that we see so often in the little gray abduction scenarios, they are in Bud Hopkins' books, they are in the UFO documentary UFOs Are Real, the Travis Walton abduction from Snowflake, Arizona, where he confronted a tall, blonde Nordic guy in the big mothership, or possibly a German South Polar colony. These are the tall blondes, in my opinion. I mean, quite probably these are the Germans from the South Pole doing genetic experiments hand in hand with the Russians and Americans under the guidance and tutelage of many extraterrestrial races and the overseeing celestial management centers and power structures that run the whole show. Thank you very much.
So that's basically what the Law of One talks about, and it's really interesting that Vladimir back then I've come to the same conclusion that they sped up their evolution through genetic modification down in Antarctica. They developed some time technologies. They've developed anti-gravity technology. They went and did bases on the Mars and Moon and other planets in the solar system and other solar systems, and have been traveling the stars. It sounds insane, but that's what's going on.
For all the interest and for all the information, and we'll be talking again.
Okay, buddy. Thanks.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
All
Roger.
right. Interesting stuff.
He's a heavyweight.
I know, from the outside, it would probably, if you haven't seen some of his material or seen some of the tape, you'd just step back and you'd,
This is
you know, we have a tape that we're going to be running. In fact, I cut in on some of the segments in the beginning of the actual footage that he has and documentation of these crafts, and it's just really amazing. You would never think it the way that, you know, we thought we won the war, or we did, and yet we're still fooling these flying saucers.
Well, you look at the fact that from what he's got, the pictures that he's got,
war isn't really meant to be won, really. It's just meant to be rearrange the management.
These are really phenomenal pictures. It demonstrates that if that technology existed at that point in time,
and enslaved people,
and I'm not questioning that, that's not an issue, but seeing this stuff in the air and seeing what it is, there's been 50 years to play with that, and it means that they've had a 50-year lead like that.
Well, you know, it isn't so much that. Jim made a question, asked him a question, how come that if there was such a...
Well, it's also, they're also getting help from these Orion Group people. So they're just they're doing trading. So they're doing things for the Orion Group to get access to the technology that allows them to stay on top of the Earth, down along with it.
An elite group of Nazis that got to leave.
Right.
You know, but if you look at the whole scenario, and even kind of Shane talked about it a little bit on his show, the Illuminatis and the secret government that actually are the bankers that are running this, if they're running and funding a black operation like this to begin with, you know, they're going to take their piggy bank and move it. And they have the money to do it, and they have the ways, and if both continents are involved in something like that, they're going to allow that to happen. You know, the American...
The movie Elysium, pretty good depiction of this, except it's not just an orbital space station, it's other planets.
Came in and they moved all those, they created everything up and moved it up to Canada and then sent it back down to White Sands, and the Russians did the same thing with their group of people. So it isn't, you know, it really isn't that secret when you get down and see this kind of thing. Okay, but again, I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit here. If the Germans had this, and there was an elite type of a group, I mean, we saw all of the other stuff that they used. They even used it against the Brits, and some of the submarines were the most advanced submarines at their time. Why haven't we seen it since if this has been going on since the 30s and 40s, why hasn't the public been aware of this? Why hasn't the public seen a flying saucer as much as they would like to say they have?
Oh, they did.
So when do you guys want to...
We just didn't have a way to communicate it back then, but there people were photographing all kinds of stuff.
I think we've seen plenty of flying saucers. There's no question that we've seen exceptional numbers of craft here in the United States. We haven't recently seen a lot of craft, but during the 40s, late 40s, early 50s.
Early 50s a lot.
There was a tremendous amount. Then we had flaps in the 60s and we had them in the 70s. It seems that even this year, there seems to be a very high number of sightings. We're getting some locally here. Some things are being seen in the air.
Some are crap, but some are real.
There's more scuttlebutt from other places in the United States, and I think the only thing that's happening is that with the way the different UFO groups are set up, there isn't really that kind of central focus where sightings are being collated.
And the UFO groups are totally being co-opted, so I would avoid them.
And the information got back out to the public, so we're seeing it, so we're knowing what's going on. And I think that there's a number of the craft that are out there now have cloaking capability, and generally we don't see them operating during the day.
Yeah, they got cloaks, man.
So that's another factor. It comes down to now whether the craft that are operating are, in other words, from here or from somewhere else. That's really a very difficult question to answer right now.
The ones we see, they're mostly from here, but there are people that will see positive ones and negative ones depending on their orientation. They can be able to see it. Some people can see them clearly.
Well, Tesla kind of had his finger on the pulse of things back in the 30s and just kind of backed off. I've heard Vladimir use the same thing in that machine that he was talking about, that death ray. He did have it for the government, and they loaded it on a train, and they even blew part of a mountain up, and the government just wouldn't use it.
Well, you know, the other thing too is besides...
I didn't know that. They did that, but that sounds about right.
Technology like that, we're seeing an awful lot of people who are having encounters. Now, who they're having encounters with, what these individuals are, we know they look a lot different than us. And it appears that, in other words, there is a program going on, and they're not really interested in us seeing craft or objects in the air. They're whoever's carrying out this agenda is much more concerned about keeping things quiet.
You have to realize that with the communications that we have nowadays and the sophistication that we have in radar and being able to put satellites in going to the moon, that each government, or anyway the superpowers, knows what the hell's going on. They know that if there's something down in Antarctica, they know.
They're involved with managing it, of course.
What's down there. There's no hiding that. They know
I mean, it's compartmentalized. So when the commands go up, they'll stop at some point and nothing happens.
But they're just not telling us.
Well, that's what I'm getting about. I think it's...
Why would you need to? They do tell you, but they're not going to tell you specifics. And they're not going to tell you as it's happening. But then you can figure it out if you really want to know.
It becomes more of a secret government. The more and more I get involved in this, the more and more I talk to people that'll come up to me and say, Ted, I was a radar man 50 or 20 years ago, and I was in North Dakota, and we scrambled jets over UFOs, and all of a sudden we were told from higher levels to erase everything. We haven't seen it, and just erase it. Just take it out like it wasn't even there. And he was telling me that when they do this type of thing, they have to go to 3 levels or 4 levels. So once it got to the 4th level, then it had to go back down and erase everything.
But
so
somebody at a very high level knows what's going on.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Of course. Of course they do. You can look at how things are set up and you can see it. It's not, they don't even hide it.
The medium Maria Orsic was leader of the beautiful young ladies of the Vril Society. In pre-World War II Germany, the Sisters of Vril conducted research into psychic phenomenon, advanced propulsion technology, and saucer-shaped aircraft. The Vril Society, whose members included some who would later become notable members of the Nationalist Socialist Party in Germany, believed that many ancient civilizations owed their origins to refugees from Atlantis. They advanced the idea of a subterranean civilization ruled by an ancient parent race who had mastered free energy.
So the Law One goes into this a little bit, and Ra talks about the inner Earth and the ancient root races, and calls them root races, just some of the races that came here from other star systems, and one's from here, and one's from other places as well. So, and one's from Mars.
This Aryan,
most of the people here from Mars, so they blew up their planet. They wiped off the atmosphere, fighting each other, and that group is still here, and that's why they're pretty warlike.
breakaway civilization was said to have survived the antediluvian cataclysms which ended the Ice Age and continued to thrive below the surface of the Earth.
Right.
Nationalist Socialist Germany claimed the territory of New Swabia in Antarctica, sent an expedition there in 1938, and began building secret deep underground bases below the ice.
I mean, there's also lots of pyramids there, and that maybe during a period there was that wasn't always an ice cap. It may have been a tropical region.
They defeated a post-World War II attack by Allied forces in 1946, led by Admiral Byrd, who retreated in disgrace after suffering substantial damage and casualties, known as Operation High Jump.
Correct.
While the United States government continues to suppress this Vril free technology, the Nationalist Socialist elite that did not surrender in 1945 have allegedly expanded a massive secret space program which now includes colonies on the Moon and Mars.
And other star systems. Well, that's about it for that video, and yeah, I just wanted to do a watch along with you guys. Go give Robert Stafford Life a like and subscribe. Fair use, and we'll talk to you soon.